So now that the joists are in, the carpenter in me wants to get busy and slam that decking down, but I can't, because there are some systems that have to be installed in the crawl space before the decking goes on. The first of those is the plumbing, and the first part of plumbing is waste and vent. Now there is a priority list, a chronology in the mechanical systems that go into your house first, second, and third. First is plumbing, because nobody can change how gravity is going to transport the water out. The fall and the access and the flexibility that's required to get the right fall is non-negotiable. Second is the ductwork. We'll talk about that in another video. But HVAC takes a lot of space and is fairly specific in where it has to go, so the ductwork comes after the plumbing, and then after the plumbing and the ductwork are in place comes the electrical. Right now we're going to start with the plumbing. Since the entire sewer system is gravity, depends on gravity and the steady effect of water running downhill, we're starting at the highest point furthest into the house. We've identified the best route to take the main plumbing line so that it comes within striking distance of not only all of the fixtures on the first floor, but access points where the lines from the upstairs can come down the exterior walls and tie into this same main sewer line in the crawl space. With that located, we come to the extreme end and I core drill a hole through the foundation stem wall to install a clean out and to secure the elevation of the pipe as it begins its descent towards the sewer line in the street. Think of a clean out like we're installing here, a threaded cap, like an access point into the sewer system. It's like a secret trap door into a basement, except it is a threaded cap into a sewer line. So if there's ever a blockage, you can unscrew the cap and clean out the pipe. This is what a roto-rooter uses. This is the kind of access that a drain cleaner, a plumber with a snake, some hand-powered, some mechanical, just has to have if he's going to get into your plumbing system and remove the clogs that are making your life miserable. Sometimes these cleanouts are located inside a house, which can work, but it's a lot better when they're outside. That way you keep those messy, messy tools outside of your house. Now the sewer pipe slopes down steadily, and I'm controlling this slope by measuring these blocks. By the way, the blocks can be any kind of wood. It doesn't have to be new. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be regular enough that you can cut it into lengths that, in this case, grow 1 inch for every 4 feet that the sewer line is traveling. I know the joists are level, so if I simply add 1 inch to each block, attach them flush to the top of the floor in each case, I'll know that the bottom of the blocks are descending at the ideal rate of 1/4 inch per foot. Don't cut corners when you're installing these blocks or when you're fastening the pipe to the blocks. This needs to be a very permanent, very bulletproof installation. And you don't know who might be crawling around under your house to fix your furnace, your HVAC, or to take care of a pest problem, or to smooth the visqueen out if you have some sort of a vapor issue growing in your crawl space, and they're pulling themselves along and bracing themselves off of the plumbing lines, and you do not want them to be dislodged, to be pulled down, to be pushed up, to be moved out of line, because that will affect the grade, and when the grade goes bad, your plumbing goes bad. Now all the drains in the whole house drain into this one pipe. The sinks, the toilets, the showers, all of it. And it will travel out of our house and make its way to the street, and then all the way to the city water treatment plant where it is cleaned up. We are using white PVC pipe, and it really works well. You could also use black ABS plastic pipe. It's everywhere. It's commonly used, And there's not a thing wrong with it. In fact, it glues up. The joints are less prone to leak than PVC pipe. But the problem is, if you leave it laying around, particularly out in the sun, particularly not regularly supported, it'll warp. It'll take a set. And now you're trying to establish a smooth, even grade with a pipe that is not necessarily straight to start with. And that complicates an already fairly complicated job. Now, like a lot of other systems in the house, the plan shows you where your plumbing fixtures are, but usually not how to build it. Most residential plans that I'm familiar with do not have isometric drawings, do not show you exactly where the 90s and the 45s and the elbows need to be, or when the diameter of the pipe needs to reduce, or how to vent the sink. That is accomplished with experience and with knowledge of codes. Every house is different. That's why a plumber has to be able to figure these things out so that he has the right number of parts and pieces there when he is ready and available and rolled out and doing the work. Like other processes in construction, it's not a recipe. It's more of a picture of the final product. The sewer line, the waste and vent system, has to be suspended sort of in air, right, at a particular slope, and it has to always stay there. It can never sag. You can never get a low spot, so it has to be attached at least every 4 feet, says the code. But beyond how it's attached, it has to be attached firmly enough that no matter who gets down here to maintain this, no matter if in the future there's an 11-year-old boy down here playing around building a fort, that he can't pull it down. And not only that, but the really not excessive weight that this has to carry every once in a while when 8 or 10 gallons of water are running through there, any vibration that's set up, it has to resist that. But primarily, it has to resist the in and out of maintenance, and for that matter, the installation of a duct system, the installation of the insulation in the floor system, the coming and going of the tradesmen and the maintenance people that will be part of this crawl space for the life of the structure. I mentioned that this sewer system is gravity fed. That means that gravity and slope and water will take everything out of the building. So that is way better in every case than having to use a pump. And pumps exist, and we may do some footage on that someday, but thankfully in this house, gravity is going to do its good work. When you begin to lay out your drainage system, you have to understand how much fall you have, because gravity implies and requires fall. There's an ideal slope, a target slope of about 1/4 of an inch per foot works well. It's not too much, it's not too little. There is a minimum slope that you can't be less than, and we'll speak to that. But right now, just understand that we started at the furthest distance from the chase through the footing, and then applied that rule of 1/4 inch per foot from the furthest distance, progressing through the house until we've ended up here at the low side of the waste and vent system. And we had to make up at the end, what is this, maybe 16 inches of fall in one sudden drop. That means we had 16 inches more fall than we had to have in this system in order to get the material out. Too much fall is great. Too little fall, you're going to be buying a pump. It's interesting, but this system will drop into the city sewer about 30 feet out and probably 12 feet deeper than this right here, which means it's really going to be flying heading out from here. But connecting to a city sewer it's awesome. I'm going to call it a privilege. It's certainly a convenience, and it's expensive. I mean, it costs. The hookup fee is expensive. The system development charges are expensive, but so is putting in a septic tank. If you have to put in a septic tank, that's going to cost significantly more money than it costs to hook up to the city sewer. And here's the deal, then you've got to maintain it. And if it fails, it's your problem. But this, now that it's been inspected, Ryan Kirshner brought out his camera, he inspected it, he saw something suspicious, he checked it out, it was all good. We know that once it drops into this system and heads out through that stem wall, it's gone. I mean, it's always gone, and it's nothing that we'll ever have to worry about, or whoever lives here will ever have to worry about again. Now, that system development charge, if that's interesting to you, and the hookup fee, if that's something you're interested in, we have links in the notes that'll show you how to access, those costs that we make available to supporters. But the thing that I want you to think about is laying out your waste and vent system is important because of all the systems that you want to have go bad on a Christmas Eve, probably the last one is your sewer system.
Leaks with it. The white pipe sticks. Now it's perfect. For this bathroom, that's a 3-inch coming out.
You're noticing that I'm not fitting these pipes. I've got a real plumber doing it. I've known Phil for 20 years. I've been using him in my contracting for 20 years. And he is excellent. He knows exactly how to do this. And as you watch him do this, you're thinking, what's the big deal, right? I mean, it's just pipe and it's glue. Well, actually, it's not rocket science, but it is not easy. These joints and these distances and these slopes and these angles, this is not as intuitive or as obvious as it looks once it's in place. I know that. I have better ways and places to spend my time, and I have confidence these guys are going to get these fittings and these assemblies and this system designed and installed correctly. And it'll be ready to go next week when it's time to put the decking on this thing.
Now, once again, we've got one of these little casting nubs, and it's sitting straight up and down on the writing. Well, pretty close, you know what I mean? So that makes this go on a 45. And this straightens it out. So look at this thing. See, that's level. Plumb. And plumb is, you know, this gets you close is what I'm getting at, real close. But you need to check it with the level if you're going to have any pride in workmanship.
For me, anytime I can help, I like to help. It saves cost. I'm in the system. I know how it works. I'm able to facilitate and be part of the process. I like that. And Phil lets me do that. But it's his brain, it's his know-how, it's his code knowledge, it's his facility with the fittings and he's the guy that's making this happen. And it's fun to watch, but it's tricky to make it work first time, the way it needs to work first time.
See the distance between the bottom here and here? This one has to be longer. Yeah, that's how they do it. You're a journeyman now.
Phil comes from a plumbing family. His dad, Pat, started Rokus Plumbing here, I think, about the time I was born. I don't know, maybe a little after that. But Pat's been plumbing for a long time, since you had to cut the threads by hand. And since every water line was, you know, it was either sweated copper or threaded galvanized. And so the family has been part of the huge transition in plumbing and plumbing technology. And Phil and his brother Mike have been watching that. They grew up in that. They were under houses sweating copper joints and putting in these systems when they were 10 years old. And there's no way to duplicate that kind of familiarity except to start when you're a kid. So I've been using Phil and his brother Mike, but Phil primarily. Mike was drawn off into other things, and so Phil's here today. I always call him. It doesn't matter what the tricky problem is, even if it's wiring. Phil is a great guy. He's funny, and he really knows how to do this work.
That nub is the only thing I can go from. And I know these are really true because that's an injection mold point. And when they build a mold, everything's straight right on stuff. It's really weird that I haven't made any catastrophic mistakes yet. We have to saw the whole thing out. We're not done yet. Sign of a plumber with any amount of experience at all, you'll have glue just dripping down everywhere. Oh, I got glue on my hand. Now we're going to check this. Hold that up against there, and I gotta hold this in.
Not plumb. Come up to get plumb.
You can brake, just barely, because we want to take it downhill. Okay, yeah, this one is 10.5 also. If you're doing this, you have a chop saw out there and a guy he'll be doing blocks and anything else you want cut.
This sewer system, this waste and vent system, is made out of PVC pipe. And if you pause for just a second to think about what this would have been made of 50 years ago, cast iron, 100 years ago, I don't know. You know, I don't know how, I guess cast iron's probably been around for 100 years, but think of how expensive that would have been and hard to work with. And so if we're tempted to lament how expensive plumbing is now, I think we have no idea how expensive plumbing really should be. Think about the utility of a product like this. It's light. It weighs almost nothing. It will not corrode. Worlds without end. It will, I mean, you put this stuff in a landfill, it's always going to be in that landfill. And in the shade, in the crawl space, nothing will ever degrade this, with the exception of abuse from those coming and going. So it glues in a moment. It comes in a complete range of fittings and sizes. It's smooth, nothing hangs up on the inside. If you get the slope right, it's all going out. And so this is one of those things that we accept now as sort of the default position in our lives, which really is a modern construction miracle that everyone should be thankful for if hygiene and sanitation is important to you like it is to me. Okay, PVC pipe is a real winner.
Always something to consider too is how you're going to glue something together. You know, when you fix a water pipe in a ditch and you tell somebody to dig the ditch and they just dig a ditch so you can see it. When you need is a ditch 6 feet long so you can warp the pipe, pull it way up out of the way. Okay, I'm going to stick this in. I'll put this one in and let it go down. Push on it, get a little more in. Good enough for the girls I go with.
Yeah, it's gonna be lovely.
All right, let's go down to the kitchen. Break this tape on a big hole. There's a big hole, little hole, big hole. So, if you bend it across the big hole, now you're double strength there. And really important if you use plastic plumber's tape to double it up like that. That bend over also leaves a smooth area that doesn't catch on everybody's pants that walks through here. Like that.
Nice. Is that right?
Right. Each block is an inch longer, so we put them every 4 feet. So from here to here, 10 inches. 4 feet on down the road is about right here. I mean, you don't have to get super accurate. So this one's 11 inches. And it gets us our grade, 1/4 inch per foot. We don't want a lot of grade, and we don't want it flat. If you have too much grade, back in the old days, they tell you that the waste would hang up and the water would leave right away. So anytime you had to go down real quick, you'd come along, drop at a 45, straighten out, drop at a 45. So you're stair-stepping. Or go straight down. And a 45 in the plumbing world is the same as vertical. They consider it. So if you had a wild 30-degree angle, the water would go fast and the other stuff would hang up. And it's not a code rule anymore, but I believe it's because the pipes back in the day were rough and they would catch stuff and they would want to hang up. The new pipe's super slick, so they just let you do whatever you want. But not a fitting, see, like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty good.
If this house was sitting on a slab-on-grade floor or a basement, the sewer system wouldn't look much different. The slopes would be essentially the same. The fittings would be essentially the same or very similar. The glue joints would be exactly the same, but it would all be buried in the ground. So think of the difference between burying these things in the ground and getting them right and the slopes right and supported and backfilled, and just hanging them from floor joists and being able to measure. So you can see that this is one of the moments when a crawl space is, or this is one of the aspects where a crawl space really reduces some work. And it's just so interesting to think of all of this happening in essentially exactly the same way under the ground. If this house was built on a full basement, this waste and vent system would have elements both of the way it exists now, with waste and vent happening up between floor joists and possibly in soffits or chases at the ceiling level. And then it would also include elements of a septic waste and vent system below slab on grade, because at some point it would have to drop down below the slab, be trenched into the subgrade, and go out to pick up the drainage from the fixtures that are happening in the basement. So a basement includes waste and vent considerations both of slab on grade systems and crawl space systems.
Yeah.
Screw the side up.
So we are a long ways from finished with the waste and vent system in this house. This is just the underfloor portion, which needs to be installed and tested and inspected before the deck goes on, because the inspector's not going to crawl to inspect this work. And frankly, it would be harder to fix if there was a problem after the decking was on. But once these walls are on the first floor, the joist for the second floor, the upstairs is framed and the roof is dried in, then it's going to be time to put waste and vent through the whole house. So there's going to be a lot more to show, a lot more to see, and a lot more to say about drainage and venting, which will become more obvious, more apparent, and profoundly important to this system and the way that it functions.
Stage, not real. You can kill them. You can kill bugs.
Yeah.
Not go to hell. Okay. Limited amount of time to do this. Hold Mary again.
Oh wow, that looked nice.
That red level.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. Okay. Tied in.
And that's pretty cool. That just like clicked like zip.
That was just luck.
I hope that camera wasn't too like bouncing all over like Blair Witch Project, you know?
The system is tested for leaks by plugging the sewer pipe outside the footprint of the house and filling the whole system with water, and not just full, but with 10 feet of head pressure. This standpipe is installed, braced up, and filled to the top so that the inspector can be sure that the system does not leak.
That means that it's like you look at nylons under a microscope and stretch them, you see a whole bunch of X's expanding out.
Yeah.
It wants to go back the way it was made, putting the water Where did it come back?
Yeah.
It's 5 o'clock.
Yeah, he said, okay. That's okay, he's getting a little rest. There's not as much like meat for it to hang on to, huh?
Yeah, they make them chunky like this because at the end of the day you're gonna hit it with a hammer, hope most of it don't go down the drain. Pick it out, and it's no bigger around than the outside. You put a fitting back over it, see?
Regarding our system, the Crawlspace access hole is right over there, which means that all of the coming and going, including the furnace, including the central heating and air conditioning furnace that's going to go in down here, has to come through that hole and across this pipe. That has to be sturdy. In fact, the distance from this support to the support going through the foundation is over 4 feet, obviously. So once the furnace is in here, we'll drop another support in, which will make this, bulletproof. The furnace will be in, the heavy lifting will be done underneath the crawl space, and nobody will ever push a belly in this pipe or crack it when they're crawling in and out doing their work.
You may have seen me using this quite a bit. It's not the proper way to cut pipe. These need to be square. It cuts pretty darn square, but a chop saw or even a skill saw cuts it more square, and I'm super aware when I'm cutting what I'm doing to make it square. It's not easy to do, and if the blade gets kerf knocked off of one side and it cuts crooked, and if I see that it's crooked a little bit, like that one's crooked, I don't know if you can even see that, but a lot of times I'll just take and trim it and square it up. And it has to be reamed. The inside bore always has to be reamed. You see me doing that? That's not the right way to do it either, but that's what I do. They make a tool for that. They make a tool that reams the outside and puts a chamfer on it. The inside of a fitting has a mating chamfer. So do as I say, not as I do. See, you're just giving bad info. There's a whole world of difference between a contractor coming in and whipping a job out because they're making money doing it. Everything they do to save time is more money in their pocket. On the other hand, they also want to do it as best they can. It's not like they're going to do something and cut a corner to make more money unless they're a poor carpenter or a bad contractor. But the whole point of it is when you're building your own house, you can take your time and really think things out and make things logical and thinking of the future. What happens when 20 years from now when you got some leak somewhere? Can you even get to it to work on it? And when you think about that part, if you're doing your very own home, it'll pay for itself a long time from now. Yeah, I don't do new installs very much at all because I'm a one-man show and I'm not competitive compared to a crew with young people that can hop around. Yeah, that's the point of I make things too difficult because I think too far ahead because I've seen all the horrible things I've had to fix. A lot of the new plumbers get apprenticed with an outfit that doesn't really teach them a whole rounded world. They may only learn how to, plumb a house, or if they're working on a big job, they may put sinks in apartment buildings for 2 years, and they know how to put a sink in pretty good. Then they struggle because they don't have being raised in a plumbing family, you kind of, from day one, you learn a lot more than your average plumber would in an apprenticeship program. But I forgot 90% of what I learned. Okay, look, we got that, and that going. We won't put water in it tonight, let that cure. We'll put water in it tomorrow, probably.
Thanks for watching this video. Plumbing is like every other aspect of construction, and that is there's not just one way to do it. And I know a lot of you are professional high-end plumbers and know high-end professional plumbers and may well see aspects of this that you would do differently, and that's great. That frankly is one of the real appealing aspects of building things, is that there's always something to learn, and usually there's always someone to teach you. As always, thank you for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.
Okay, kids. I am covered in glue. My brand new shoes are covered in it. Okay. So what else do we got? Teflon this plug. Okay, we're gonna call it a day, I think.
If you're thinking about building a house, you've got to watch our disclaimer video to get the context of what we're doing here, why we're making the choices we're making, and how it might apply to the choices that you have to make in your project.